Hello, my name is Tamika Huns. I am a DMP student at Jacksonville State University, and this is NU 713, Module 5, and this is my PowerPoint, my Extreme Makeover PowerPoint around organization and systems leadership for the Advanced Practice Nurse, the spring semester of 2020. In this lesson, we're looking at our table of contents, which includes our introduction and our learning outcomes, how miscommunication can occur in the workplace, cafeteria conversations around miscommunications. Then we'll take a look back and reflect and rewrite the narrative around miscommunication, and we'll change the story and therefore look at the conclusion. DiversaCare is a nursing home facility, a long-term care facility that has 3 units, which is inclusive of 60 patients on each unit. DiversaCare mission statement reads that it is our mission to improve every life that we touch, providing exceptional health care and exceeding expectations. Consistent with DiversaCare's mission and core values, the nursing home administration is responsible for ensuring delivery of the highest quality of care for our patient. The central core values at DiversaCare include integrity, excellence, compassion, and teamwork. The purpose of today's PowerPoint presentation is to identify a time when the DMP student experienced a conflict due to miscommunication and how effective communication could have decreased the incident of this workplace miscommunication, and also the leadership's role in promotion of effective communication in the work environment. Now, on this slide, we're going to discuss the actual miscommunication. And this incident occurred early in this writer's career, where I was the unit manager on a long-term care facility. On this unit, we primarily took care of Alzheimer's and dementia patients. There were 60 patients on the unit. Most of the patients that were housed on our unit would be long-term care patients, which meant once they were admitted, they stayed with us until they were discharged home, or they would subsequently pass away. But on today's incident, we're talking about a patient that was there for a short-term stay. So our current standard operating procedures around patient discharge would include a verbal review of the medications with the patient's family member upon discharge on the day of discharge by the discharging nurse. And that nurse will provide the family with medications from the facility, and we would usually try to provide the patients with a 30-day supply of their current medications. We also would encourage family members to follow up with their primary care physician within 7 days of their discharge. On this particular day, I was making rounds around the unit, and I overheard a patient sponsor, which was her husband, on the phone, and he was discussing that he had the need to stop by the pharmacy because he needed medications to provide to his wife over the course of the next few days. And I became concerned because this is not our normal practice, and we would usually cover medications for our patients for 30 days as previously stated. However, I wanted to get more information about why this patient's family felt that he needed to stop by the pharmacy for meds. There obviously had been some miscommunication about this, and I returned to the desk to speak with the discharging nurse around the incident. I returned to the room after speaking with the nurse, who ensured me that all meds had been given and that the patient had a adequate supply. Then spoke with the patient's sponsor about his understanding of the medication regimen that had been prescribed. And there was three essential problems that I noticed that occurred after the conversation with both the nurse and the family member. First, the nurse gave discharge information while multitasking other duties. She failed to ensure that the family member had a clear understanding of the medication regimen that the patient was being discharged with. Secondly, the patient's family did not fully understand the instructions provided by the nurse due to his inability to read the information within the discharge instructions. That too would pose a serious problem when he returning back home with his wife. And finally, the label on the medication read to give the medication every 4 hours as needed. The family member had assumed after the discussion with the nurse that he was to give that medicine routinely every 4 hours. So again, each of these situations led to question or would lead one to believe that this could ultimately result in a serious health problem for the patient. Okay. All right. What we the recount of this situation and what we learned is the essential thing was that miscommunication could have led to the patient being over medicated or even harmed. There was not a clear understanding by the patient's family member, nor had anyone taken the time to reevaluate the patient's family member understanding of the medication regimen. Okay, so what does this tell us about that organization? And what I observed around this was that this miscommunication could have happened more than one time, and that definitely it needed to spark a change in our standard operating procedure, our SOPs, around patient discharges, and that we really needed to take a look at quality control efforts and concepts to further promote our patient safety. So then we started to evaluate the organization as conversation. And this evaluation is where conversations are evaluated as an ongoing aspect of the organizational life, and it shapes the way members perceive the environment, their patients, and their tasks. And so what we found was that this discharging nurse was expected to have a conversation with a patient prior to the discharge. However, we know that conversation had many variables within it as the nurse was multitasking. She was administering other medications around the same time that she was giving discharge information to the patient. So we know that there was not active talking nor active listening, and she failed to recognize that this patient family did not have a full understanding. Okay, secondly, patterns of relating. And patterns of relating relate to how people interact with each other or the organization culture. And we understood that on most days, everyone at the facility was focused on completing tasks and jobs. And we found that we were working in silos versus working as a team, a well-structured team. Most staff members felt that they were overworked and felt rushed with completing tasks. We also noted from the environment that there was a more of a linear organizational structure, and there was top-down leadership. Many of the nurses felt that they did not have a strong voice in making decisions or recommendations for change at that current time. Okay. Patterns of meaning. Patterns of meaning focus around the specific things that exist within the organization. It focuses on the mission of the organization, or the goals and guidance of the organization. What we found that what was actual was very different from the organization mission. The staff felt that there were shortages in staffing. They had high patient caseloads. Discharge was often occurring around medication administration time, and the nurses found themselves multitasking when completing different tasks. So, ways of talking, listening, and being. Ways of talking would provide, each conversation will present an opportunity for reinforcing existing group values, norms, and novelty of change. But one has to actively be involved in the listening process of these conversations. So that would mean attending the conversation, paying attention, and also offering nonverbal cues and verbal communications back. The ways of being include being aware and awake and present in the moment, and also being engaged with those and becoming one with those in your group and those around you. The innovation process of meaning makes results in the identification of gaps in the evidence and misalignment. Innovation could lead one to develop changes in practice, and also will lead to practice-based evidence. The ability to build and maintain trust in relationships would all steer and guide innovation, as well as a curiosity to lead innovation, and also having courage to identify when there were areas that the facility or organization needed to work on. So if we take a look and reflect and rewrite this narrative, we know that there needed to be an update on the standard operating procedures, that all nurses needed to be informed on the changes of this standard operating procedure. Nurses will start to review patient medication regimens with the patient 24 hours prior to their discharge. Nurses will review medication and discharge instructions in a quiet and confidential area. The patient or family would acknowledge understanding verbally and in writing, and written instructions will be printed in the language of the patient on a minimum third grade level. And there will also be a follow-up call by the nurse supervisor. So if we were to take a look back at how this narrative could be changed, we would know that there will be a discharge meeting held by a discharge team that will be inclusive of all disciplines within the organization, that the patient family would have a social worker assigned to them, and this social worker would steer and guide the training and schedule trainings for the patient family members with the nurses and care team. And the nurses would meet with the patient, give instructions on how to administer the medications, the times of the medication, and would also be provided return demonstrations from the patient family members. An evaluation of additional service to assist the husband at home would also be evaluated. We would need to know if the patient needed assistance at home. And so as we look back at all of these initiatives, we understand that we have discussed the patterns of relating, patterns of meaning, ways of talking, listening, and being, integrating integration, and other concepts and ideas that would assist us in completing this task. Thank you for listening. Again, this is Tamika Hines, NU713. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.